So today is September the 10th, and we're going to get into two reports up out of the Middle East. So we have a rebuttal by the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. And I'm just going to read off my notes here. Rare rebuttal against Israel by Secretary of State Antony Blinken. It appears that a second American has been killed by the IDF. Antony Blinken said it's unacceptable. And I think last week before last, they found 5 bodies that were recovered by the IDF in a raid that they had conducted. And it said that the people were killed by Hamas. Hamas categorically denies the claim, but Israeli Defense Force found the bodies while raiding. So they claim that these people were killed 4 or 5 days before the raid. Evidence is coming out that suggests otherwise. But yeah, so we have the United States government finally lightly criticizing Israel. But this is after not only have they supplied munitions to Israel, fighter aircraft, giving them billions and billions of dollars in military aid, basically giving them the green light to strike inside of Gaza when they want to, how they want to. So yeah, the rebuttal. So let me get back to my notes. This after the U.S. has given Israel a green light to obliterate the Palestinian population. Let's not forget that the Israeli government is a satellite state of the United States, an extension of U.S. imperialism, a colonial authority whose very existence is dependent on an apartheid-type ideology. Yeah. Further reports suggest, and this is the second report that's coming up out of the Middle East, we have another massacre, again, conducted by U.S.-supported Israel. Let me get to my notes here. Okay, my pages are kind of like sticking together, and my hands are kind of dry, so I want to turn the page without licking my fingers like I'm licking a pork chop. Further reports suggest that the IDF continues to commit war crimes with an IDF airstrike that killed 40 Palestinians and wounded 60 other civilians. The airstrike is said to have happened at the Al-Mawasi at the Al-Mawasi camp. But in my notes, I say the Al-Mawasi concentration camp because that's exactly what it is. It's a concentration camp. According to the IDF reports for the Israeli Defense Force, 3 Hamas operatives were killed in the strike. And this is just routine propaganda that's coming up out of Israel. They are willing to kill 40, 50, 100 people in order to get one Hamas operative. In this case, the Israeli Defense Force alleged that they killed 3 operatives, but they massacred 40 other civilians and wounded 60 others. So my question, how long is the world going to stand by and allow this terrorist regime, the U.S.-funded apartheid state of Israel, to not only violate international law, but also continue the genocidal extermination of a defenseless people, an entire population? We must understand that Hamas is a guerrilla army. Let me say that again. Hamas is a guerrilla army. A guerrilla army secretes itself, always has and always will, within the people themselves. I mean, let's go back to Vietnam, a classical guerrilla warfare that was fought by the Viet Cong. The people themselves are the guerrillas. They provide support, they provide shelter, they provide resources, they provide manpower to the guerrilla army. So in order for Israel to destroy Hamas. They have to completely exterminate the Palestinian population. It's not like Hamas is a conventional army and they're standing on one side and the Israeli Defense Force is standing on the other side. No, this is not that kind of war. This is a war of a conventional army conducting armed attacks against a civilian population, which happens to support Hamas, which is a guerrilla army. Let's always keep that in mind. So anytime when you hear, representatives of the United States government greenlighting the total extermination of Hamas, let's just cut to the chase. They're talking about the total extermination of the Palestinian people themselves. So, how long is the world going to stand by and allow these atrocities to continue without a military intervention? I don't understand what is going on with the Arab states. It boggles me. I'm flabbergasted. I don't understand. Why don't they just move their armies in and attack Israel? But I know why. Because if they move their armies in and attack Israel, then they also have to take on America. Because again, Israel is only an extension of America. America was the first state to recognize the stolen territories of Palestine as being a white Jewish state. Let's never forget that. But we can't say that the world is just totally standing by. South Africa, our people. And when I say our people, I'm talking about, people from Africa, our people. They were the first government to file articles before the International Court of Justice accusing Israel of war crimes. So let me get back to my notes. The South Africans were brave enough to file articles of genocide against Israel with the International Court of Justice. The court documentation was filed on December the 29th, 2023. And again, Israel did not care because Israel claims an existential threat. Israel has the full backing of its master over here in the United States. So they didn't care about the articles being filed before the International Court of Justice. Not only did they snub their nose at the world, but they also intensified their terrorist attacks against a defenseless population over in Palestine. The court document was filed on December 29, 2023. As the terrorist state of Israel, crimes against humanity became more egregious. More and more countries around the world started to support the South African genocidal claim. Let me name just a few of the countries. Nicaragua was the first country to back the South African ICJ claim. Then we have Belgium. Belgium, from a study of history, was a major colonial power in Africa. Colombia, Turkey, Libya, Egypt, Maldives, and surprisingly, Mexico. Mexico is I'm starting to change my opinion about Mexico. Mexico is starting to exert its independence from the United States. In my lifetime, we looked at Mexico as just a satellite, the floor mat of the United States. In the Western Hemisphere, the United States is the most powerful government with the most powerful military, and they have proven time and time again that they will go to the extent in order to destroy any country within the Western Hemisphere that challenges its hegemony. Ireland, Chile, Palestine, and Spain. There are a host of other countries that tacitly lends support to the South African claim of genocide. I mean, Israel around the international community is in such a weak position that it would never ever regain its stature, not in the international community. I mean, Israel ripped the face off the mystery, the caricature, you know, the wool and sheep, the wolf in sheep's clothing. They've completely shown us what they are about. They are an apartheid regime that will go to the extreme in order to maintain power in the Middle East. Protests all around the world has broken out. All across Europe, across Africa, South America, virtually every, and in the United States, let's get to the United States. Virtually every major university and college in every state has had protests on their campuses, which clearly underline political divisions within America itself. You have the supporters of Israel, and then you have the supporters of, you know, they like to say the pro-Palestinian protest. No, this has nothing to do with pro-Palestinian protests. This has everything to do with people who do not support genocide. So whether, you know, it could have been in Costa Rica, where they would call it pro-Costa Rican protest. Every major university in the entire country, even some of the most conservative universities, have seen protests break out on their college campuses. But let's look at where the protests have not broken out at. And it's not surprising. According to my research, there are 107 HBCU campuses in America. Historical black college universities. 107. I think down here in Tennessee we have 7 HBCUs. On not one of those campuses have we heard of any protests breaking out on those college campuses. Is it surprising? This is why I categorically do not support HBCUs. You're not going to shame me into supporting a historical black university like they try to shame us. You know, they use shame, guilt against us if we don't support the HBCU college campuses. Why is it that you can have protests that break out across the major colleges and universities, white campuses, and black people in this country who have borne the brunt of colonialism, slavery, on their so-called HBCU campuses? Not one major protest. Now, I'm sure there's people walking around their campuses. You know, you might have the lone wolf here or there, and I'm sure that people have their opinions. But why is it we have not seen political protests break out at the HBCUs? Now, if I'm wrong, then someone enlighten me. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't heard of any. I mean, my mother, she went to Lemoyne College. That's over towards South Memphis. I haven't heard any protests over there. I haven't seen any rallies. As a matter of fact, I haven't seen any rallies in the city of Memphis, period, when it comes to what's happening over in the Middle East, which is interconnected to the destruction of hegemonism. I haven't seen any protests. I have not ran into not one black person in the country, you know, me personally coming into contact with them, that even has an opinion on the situation. So why is it that why would there not be protests? Which protest is a form of political development. I'll tell you why. Because HBCU campuses were not created by black people. You might have some founding members that might have been black, but these so-called educational enclaves were created by the colonial authorities. They received funding from the colonial authorities. Donald Trump says that the HBCU college campuses were bankrupt and that he bailed them out. If you look at the founding members of these HBCU campuses, overwhelmingly, they're white people that founded these college campuses or these institutions. As far as I know, HBCUs have never been a focal point of political protest. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, someone enlighten me. I'm sure that, when they first were founded, black people were a lot more politicized back then than what they are now. What I do know is that the administration of those college campuses are of the upper echelon of the black middle class, the petite bourgeoisie, which is the buffer group between the underclass and the ruling class. They have a vested interest in political protest not breaking out on their campuses because they receive 99% of their funding from the government. So why would you jeopardize that funding source by engaging in political propaganda and protests that the government can simply say, okay, well, you know what, we're just going to snatch their funding. The HBCUs cannot exist without government funding. The black middle class, again, the buffer zone. If we were in our own country, they would be the neo-colonial elites that would have a direct line of communication and funding from their colonial overseas masters. This is why you don't see political protests breaking out on those campuses in any way, because the HBCUs are making sure that they don't develop a generation of politicized, independent, free-thinking black people. They want to toe the same line. They want to continue in the morass of ignorance. So they intentionally avoid political agitation on those college campuses. So I'm telling the brothers, do not be shamed into supporting HBCUs. Let me say it again. Do not be shamed into supporting HBCU campuses, because they represent ideas that are antithetical to what we are trying to achieve. They're not politicized. I mean, we got decades and decades, the last 50 years. How involved have the HBCUs been in politics? And I'm not talking about Republican. We're not talking about that crap. The Democrats and Republicans. We're not talking about that. Why haven't the HBCUs made a concerted effort to build relations outside of the United States with other countries? Why haven't they? Because, again, when we talk about the black population in America, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to regurgitate this point time and time again. You're dealing with a childlike population. You might as well be dealing with 3 and 5-year-old children, because that's the response you're going to get when it's time to get down to the business. Everyone over here in these so-called black communities, they're not concerned. Well, there are no absolutes. So let's just say that the large portion of the black community in America, they're not concerned about what goes on outside of their little worlds, right? Okay, again, we're up on an election. You got a large number of blacks who are now abandoning the Democratic Party. They're going over to the Republican Party, and they can't tell you why. They can't tell you why all of a sudden they're supporting the Republican Party. You know why they're supporting the Republican Party? Because they have no political ideology outside of their colonial masters. They had a Democratic convention. When the Democrats could have shined, what did they do? They put a whore on the stage, a Megan Thee Stallion, to represent a caricature of black political thought. A caricature. They put an outright whore on the stage, and then we got all these rappers and comedians. Don't even listen to those people. Those people right there are tolling the line of their masters. And these so-called black conservatives that are starting to emerge. They want you to abandon one slave master and then run to another. But again, as I've already said, these political parties, the Republicans, the Democrats, they are all controlled by the same ruling class. And when they are controlled by the same ruling class, that makes them a unipolar party. There is no difference between Democrats and Republicans. The Republicans are just more blunt in their agenda, where the Democrats, they like to hide behind the shroud of mystery and what they're truly trying to achieve. So again, HBCUs do not support HBCU campuses. They have proven that as a center of intellectual development, that they are incapable of leading the black population to any achievable victory. You might as well go to the high school I went to, Sheffield. And you call Sheffield High School, which was one of the roughest schools in Memphis. You just call it an HBCU because they're doing nothing. They receive government funding. The administrators are overwhelmingly a part of the black intelligentsia, the black petite bourgeoisie in America. And the black petite bourgeoisie is the buffer zone between the larger black population and the colonial masters. So again, I don't know if I received a little flack from what I said yesterday about, the Venezuelan, the boogeyman of the Venezuelan gangs. I reiterate, we, my people, we are not going to be diverted along this line of tangent. We're not going to be diverted off course. As I said before, we are not going to waste not one man. We are not going to spill not one drop of blood for the black community over here in America. It is their fault that the migrants are coming into their community. You want to know why? Because again, they got content with accepting the crumbs off the table of their slave master. They've been living off in these poor-ass communities for 10, 20, 60, 90, 100 years. And the vast majority are content. You give them a Mercedes-Benz and a meaningless-ass degree, and they are content. They were never content with, okay, well, we're going to fully build to our true potential. No, that's not what they want. They want to be content. They don't want to struggle. They're not going to struggle. The black middle class, I'm telling you now, they're going to close their door. They live in their little enclaves. They are not going to come out in any meaningful way that's in opposition to, let's say, the internal rules-based social order. You know, the United States government, they always talk about the international rules-based social order, which we know what they mean. We know that means that the hegemony, the line that's set by the United States and its backers. That's the international rules-based social order. But here in America, where you have a childlike black population, where you have a black middle class that's a petite middle class, they're never going to toe a line outside of what is expected of them, which is being docile. So no, we're not going to get involved. Again, let the black community fight these meaningless battles with the migrants and all that. That's your fault. They're not going to Beverly Hills taking over. They're not going to Bel Air taking over. I live down here in Memphis. We have some of the most richest suburbs in the South. They're not going to those communities taking over. The people in you know, the upper middle class black communities, they're not worried about migrants coming into their hood, gang banging on them. Ask yourself why. But you know, we got a ton of people, and I call them weak black men, that's on the internet talking about how, you know, the black community needs to come together. They specifically talking about black gangs. The black gangs need to come together. And it's like I said yesterday, I don't give a damn if Pookie and Ray Ray get shot up and killed. That's on them. The more of them to get annihilated off the face of the earth is you know, is the more than we don't have to deal with. But if you want to know how to fight, talk to the brothers in Los Angeles, because the black community in Los Angeles fought a real battle against an existential threat. They had to come together in Los Angeles because the Sureños, at the behest of the Mexican mafia, started to target non-gang combatants. They had black people. If you think the Ku Klux Klan back in the 20s and 30s had black people scared to death, those Sureño gangs in Los Angeles and the surrounding areas all throughout Southern California, yeah, they had the blacks scared to death. Because, again, you know, it's always been tension in Los Angeles and, you know, the Southern California areas between the black community and the Hispanics. But it really came to fruition in the middle and late 90s, early 2000s. It was a vicious war that was fought down there on the streets of Los Angeles in particular. Many people died from both sides. The blacks, always fragmented. Response, always inadequate. The Sureños, organized under one, SUR means Southern United Raza. This means that every single Mexican street gang in the cities of Los Angeles, and there's tens of thousands of these people, they were united under one umbrella. But let's look at the black side. 100 Crip gangs in the city of Los Angeles. 70, 80 blood gangs in the city of Los Angeles. All fractured. No structure. No centralized leadership. No central goals. See, the Hispanic gangs had centralized leadership. So they were able to attack in a way that clearly was organized violence. And the blacks, we reactionary, we always on the defensive. They attack us, and then we go and attack them. But whereas we are attacking out of reaction, they are attacking with an agenda. So if you want to learn how to, I'm still thinking that it's a bunch of propaganda. I'm down here in Memphis. I haven't seen any Venezuelan gangs down here do anything. Maybe it's an up north thing or something. You talk about rural Colorado. I've been through Aurora a couple times. I didn't see any blacks out there. Yes, there are blacks in Colorado. Yes, there are blacks in Denver, but I can assure you that the numbers are small. And I can assure you that in places like Colorado, they don't come from a street gang culture in Colorado. So they are having to adapt. See, these people coming up out of Venezuela. And let me tell you where you're making your mistakes at. You're making your mistake by isolating that one Hispanic group, the Venezuelans. Believe you me, they're going to get support from the Mexicans. They're going to get support from the Puerto Ricans. They're going to get support from the Colombians, because that's how they operate. So yeah, it might be Venezuelan gangs, but they're receiving support from the rest of the Hispanics who have migrated into this country here. So no, you're not just fighting against the Venezuelans. Keep that in mind. They all speak Spanish. They all communicate. So no, you're not just fighting the Venezuelans. Again, I can tell you how to whoop them. I can tell you how to smash them outright. Completely crush them. But you're going to have to take the gloves off. You're going to have to be willing to fight, bleed, and die. But we shouldn't even be going through this. We need to stay concentrated on the larger goal, which is 10K, Thunder and Black Shield. 10,000 black men and their families. That's what our people are going to stay concentrated on. As far as the rest of the black community, let them get crushed out. They want to act like children. They want to be the floor mat of the world. They want to get, pissed and shitted on. That's on them. We're not going to waste time with that. But, I need somebody to comment on these videos here, particularly around, the central goal. I need some people to make comments, give me some feedback, negative, positive. All feedback is good feedback, but not just criticism for the sake of criticism. When we get our staff in position and we'll get better equipment, we're going to make more quality videos. We're going to bring in some experts, and we're going to open up panel discussions. And again, we already know what the goal is. See, we thinking well beyond the shores of the United States. BRICS is starting to emerge as a dominant power force within the world. We see it, we're seeing right before my eyes, and I'm telling you, I never would have thought that I would have been able to see the collapse of the United States, but we're seeing it right before our eyes. De-dollarization. Being kicked out of Africa, you're being kicked out of the Middle East. Your battle groups will never reach the shores of Europe in case of a war. I mean, we're literally seeing the crumbling of an empire, and I love it. I'm not gonna even lie. But I'm in this video. Hit the like and subscribe button and give me some feedback, man. We need the people to start coming in.